We finished chapter 12 yesterday. We're up to chapter 15. So in the book, Lessons in Heichaltzu, it's page 115. And in the book that we gave out in the beginning, it's page 12. So the last thing he spoke about was that a person who could be an Oved, someone who serves Hashem in a very real way, someone who works on themselves, self-refinement, and nevertheless, we can't tolerate this other person, especially people that have some they have substance to them, some prominence to them, they've attained certain spiritual levels. How does that make sense? And the answer is because there is Yeshus buried underneath in his Avodah, and Yeshus can't tolerate someone else, and the more quality the other person has, the more threatening it is to my Yeshus, because the greater the person is, it detracts from my greatness. And therefore, it's based on the Yeshus, and that causes feelings of hate and jealousy. So jealousy basically means the fact that I can't accept that this other person is superior to me in any way, has more than me, has something better than me. And that makes me upset at that person. So now he's going to say there is a jealousy, though, which is a mila, which is actually a positive thing. That's 15. Even though envy, when it's focused on spiritual matters and attaining spirituality, it can actually lead to a mila. Where do we find such a thing? It says that envy among scribes, among scholars, will actually increase Torah knowledge. Which means that when there are people who are studying Torah and you see the other person's progress, the other person's achievements, and that gets you to try to do the same. In fact, I think this also has ramifications in halacha, and that is that generally speaking, one of the harshest things that are found in Torah regarding respecting other people's possession and not chas v'shalom taking away from other people's money is something which is known as hasagas gvul. Hasagas gvul means, literally it means that if you have a field and there's a boundary, which means this is where my field ends and this is where your field begins, and there are markers there to make it clear. And then the person goes ahead and moves the markers, which means that I just took away a piece of the other person's land and made it my own. So that, that's literally what it means. But more in a broader sense, what it means in halacha is that you're not allowed to undermine another person's sustenance and source of income, which means if a person has a business, a person has a store, a person has a source of income financially, I'm not allowed to do something that in any way is going to undermine their source of income. And if yes, that's called hasagas gevul. So the question comes up, if someone has students that he teaches them Torah, and someone else wants to open up the same kind of thing on the block, also teach students Torah. So the halach is, in this case, it's permissible. Because what happens is when there are more teachers of Torah, there's more competition. If there's more competition that the teachers want to compete with each other, who's going to gain from that? The students. That's what it means, that the envy amongst Torah scholars will actually increase wisdom, and it'll bring in more Torah study and bring the children to study more. So it's a positive thing. That's one source. Another place where we find envy in a positive context is that Rachel was envious of her sister. So Rachel's sister was Leah. She was married, had a number of children, and Rachel had no children. So she was envious of her, jealous of her. How could that be? She was a tzaddikas. Here we're saying that envy is like one of the most, I would say, use the word destructive character traits, because it leads to destructive things. It leads to division, and we know that just one of the places where we can see how bad envy is. Not only leads to division and hate, envy could lead to murder. Anyone know any of an example? What? Cain and Hevel. That's what it says in Chumash, that Cain brought a carbon, Hevel brought a carbon, and Cain was upset because he saw that Hevel's carbon was accepted and his not, and he was jealous of him. And what did he do? He killed him. In other words, this person, what does killing help? This person's superior to me. Like the famous mushal, that if there's somebody higher than me, there's two ways to become higher than them. One way is to climb up in a chair and I'll be higher than them. That requires effort. So there's an easier way, knock that person down. Now that they're laying on the floor, I'm automatically higher than them. So basically, Cain was jealous of Hevel, that he's superior to him. So what did he do? He killed him, and now he's superior to Hevel. So it's such a negative character trait. Are we going to attribute that to Rachel Imenu? The Imahs were like the others. They were tzaddikim, and according to Tanya, clearly tzaddik gomer, not tzaddik sheni gomer, tzaddik gomer, as described in chapter 10 of Tanya. And not only that, but the Rashi says in Chumash that the women, meaning the Imahs, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, in the area of prophecy were even greater than the others. The others were secondary to them. So we wouldn't, chas v'shalom, even think that they have this negative character trait of jealousy. So the Gemara answers, she was jealous of her good deeds. In other words, she said to herself, good morning, she said to herself that if not for the fact that my sister has so much more good deeds than me, then this wouldn't be. So obviously I have to improve myself, that I should also have good deeds to merit to have children. But she wasn't jealous of her in the context of jealousy, where we know it as the negative character trait. She was jealous of her good deeds. In fact, there's a pasuk that says this pretty much explicitly. What does it say? Al yikane libcha b'chatoyin. Let your heart not be envious of sinners, but in b'yiras Hashem, be envious of fear of God. But the bottom line is, it's still envy. It's still jealousy. I'm still sort of going to be upset at that person. And therefore, it's going to lead to division. And division could lead to hate. And hate could lead to murder, as we see. So at the end of the day, what's the difference of what's causing it? But it's still jealousy. So he says, this envy is because this person has a strong desire to follow their good deeds and their good example, or to have the wisdom like they have. They're not jealous of the person, they're jealous of the quality. That's what they're jealous of. And what does it do? Is they're poidol of gamken l'shtadl harbe bazer. The effect of this kind of emotion, when it's in the right way, is not hate, not division, not even one iota of those kind of feelings. The effect is that it generates a stronger motivation to go ahead and rise to the occasion, to be able to improve and reach a higher level, attain a higher level of spirituality. So in other words, let's not worry that this is jealousy in a negative way, because this is the kind of competition that does the opposite. It motivates me to do more good, because I'm not jealous of the person. It's not based on yeshus. It's based on the desire to be close to Hashem, on the desire to do mitzvahs and learn Torah. I have this burning desire. And when I see someone who attained a level more than me, my desire becomes stronger. And that's all that happens. It's only positive, no negative. But then the question is, what do you need jealousy for? Just learn about how important it is to grow and grow. Why do I have to compare and feel like I'm competing with someone? So he gives the answer in the next line. V'hainu, the reason for this is when there's a feeling of envy in a negative way and also in a positive way, it reaches and touches a very, very deep internal place of the soul and triggers a very deep place in the soul. It evokes and it triggers the deeper hidden strengths of the soul. Then the person could reach a very high level. As it's explained in other places in Chassidus. What is explained in other places in Chassidus? That there are two kinds and two levels of faculties. One is called Keiches HaGluyim, the revealed faculties, and the other is Keiches HaNalamim, the hidden faculties. They're not different faculties. It's a hidden dimension of the very same faculties, which means there's a certain amount of weight that I can lift in ordinary circumstances, and then there's a certain amount of weight that I will lift when there is a crisis and there's a situation where my very life is being challenged. And then we know people could lift weights that normally they'd never be able to lift. People could run distances that they would never be able to run. People have been known to jump, to bend bars, to do things that are not normal. They can never do this in normal circumstances, but that's what adrenaline does. So to understand adrenaline in a deeper way, it means that means that when I test my muscles and I see that I can lift 20 pounds max, I can't lift more than 20 pounds, that's called Keiches HaGluyim. This is the revealed, superficial degree of how much I can lift. But I really possess more than that. But what I possess more is so deep rooted in my neshama, it's not going to surface in ordinary circumstances. Only when it's challenged and something very strong that's challenging it, that will trigger the deeper dimension of the keiches and release it, and then I can lift something which is much heavier. And the same is with all the faculties, and we know the same applies to seichel, that the brain of a person is also limited, how deep I can go. Everybody has their limitations. Some people are more intelligent, some people are less intelligent. So what does the Gemara say? The famous quote, I learned a lot from my teachers, I learned a lot from my colleagues, but the most wisdom I've gained was from my students, which means that the fact that the students challenge the teacher with questions, and the teacher has to think of an answer to the question, that brings out a deeper layer of depth of wisdom in the teacher's mind. So in other words, the brain, everyone knows, even in science, it's clear that the brain has much more potential than what we use. I mean, what I've heard is something that we use 5% of our brain cells. That's pretty interesting. 5%, which means imagine what would happen if we'd use 10%, 20%, 90%, 95%. And I guess this is what the tzaddikim are. These are people, the Torah study, their brain is like a computer with like not just a computer, state-of-the-art computer, where they know the whole Torah by heart, and they can tell you where every word is, and they know it verbatim, and not just Chumash, and not just Gemara, but Rashi, and Tosfos, and Mefarshim. How does that happen? That brain is like I said, the only thing we can think of is a computer. So we all have a certain potential, and the potential is more than what we experience in ordinary circumstances. What brings out the potential? When I'm challenged. There's a very famous Hayom Yom that gives another example of this. I forgot what day it is, but Hayom Yom says in Gemara, there's a principle called migui. Migui means like this: when two people come to us in a bezdin, in the court of rabbis, we don't know who's saying the truth and who's lying. So we look to find evidence. Evidence could be one witness, evidence could be two witnesses. Sometimes there's sort of circumstantial evidence. It's different. There's a whole chapter in Torah about what would be considered solid evidence and what could we rely on and what not. One of the things that's used in Torah as evidence is when a person comes and says something in Bezdin, And we say if they were really interested in lying, they could have said something else and gained so much more. They could have said such and such an argument. And being that they didn't give this argument, obviously it's true. For example, just to give an example, if a person comes to me and says, you owe me $100, you borrowed $100 from me, you owe me $100. And I say, I did borrow $100 from you, but I already paid you back $50. Again, I'm not giving any halachic ruling here. Please don't go to your friend and now do something based on this. I'm just saying something randomly without going into the details.
Yeah, I don't have that much money to
$49, like the sphere. So we say, if this person was really a liar, why did he have to say, I borrowed and I paid you back some of it? He could have said, I never borrowed money in the first place. And he's off the hook. And the other person has no evidence that he ever borrowed money. In other words, I could have said a better lie. This is simple. But in the Gemara, there's a lot more complicated cases where the sages say, you know what? He could have said this and this, could have said that and that. So the Rabbi Majeski once says, wait a second. Let's remember, we're talking about ordinary people, a man, a woman, not scholars, simple people come to Bezdin and they give an argument. And the rabbis, with their brilliant, genius, scholarly minds, are saying, he could have said this and this. What do you expect him to think of it? This is something that a scholar in Gemara was able to think of, a better argument. Maybe this person didn't argue the better argument because he's simply not intelligent enough to think of that better argument. Anyone remember this Hayom Yom? What's the answer? So he says the answer is when something really is negeya, how do you say that in English? Something is really matters to me in a deep way, the brain will think of things that normally would never think of. So a simple man or a simple woman, not even a scholarly people, would think of some ideas that some of the scholars would think of because they're being challenged. So that's the brain. And that's why there's so much to gain when there's questions and answers and challenges. And that's the way it is with all the faculties of a person, that when they're challenged, something deeper comes out.
Right, even if they didn't study the Gemara, they'll think about the argument.
Right. The Gemara is saying, when these two people come to court, the Gemara is discussing, he could have said this, but this person might not even know the Gemara.
You're saying he might know that, he
would think of it, right. It's like when a person's in danger, suddenly a thought comes, I can do this, that, and get out. How do I think of it? Because you're under such, it was the adrenaline of the brain that came out. Just like there's adrenaline physically, there's adrenaline of the brain. I don't know if that's what I would call it scientifically, but it means there's a deeper layer of intellectual energy that comes out when I'm threatened, when I'm challenged. And the same with emotion. If you have an emotional feeling towards someone, a mother who loves her child, if chas v'shalom, that feeling is threatened, like unfortunately the incident that just happened with Miron, they say that the telephones in Israel were just shut down because phone calls were coming from all over the world, which means every person around the world that had a loved one in Israel at the time was worried, where's my husband, where's my son, are they there, what's going on? So the feeling of love that they felt in those moments is much more than what they feel in ordinary circumstances, because God forbid there's something that's threatening that connection. So a much deeper feeling comes out. And this is the idea of envy, that when you see someone and that person has made progress and reached and attained a certain level, and you're envious of that in the positive way, that's going to trigger and that's going to stimulate such deep feeling of a desire and generate an intense feeling to go ahead and do everything I can to reach those levels that in ordinary circumstances I wouldn't be able to develop such feelings. Understand? So, for example, when we do things with children with competition, we also have to be done in a very sensitive way, not to hurt anybody. Nobody should feel that they're losing out. And the only purpose should be just to motivate those that have more potential to be able to do more. And every person will do more that way. I think of an interesting thing that Unfortunately, people that have Parkinson's, so sometimes they're walking and they just get stuck. They can't move their foot. One of the things that they're told to do is put your foot in front of their foot, and suddenly, whoop, they move over your foot. In other words, the fact that they're being challenged somehow triggers something in the brain, and they're able to move because they're being stopped. When they stop themselves, they can't get themselves to move. Now that you're stopping them, they're able. So you're being challenged. It goes. So there's many things and many examples where we see physically that's the way it works.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
what's the Hasidic definition of a challenge? Like, why do we need a challenge for us to access the deeper, prayer? Why can't it be the height of joy? What does it have to be?
Challenges?
Yeah.
Are you referring to that book, If I Were God?
Yes.
I would create the world differently. I mean, there are answers to the question. And I don't know how this answer would apply to everything and anything. But let me just say the next lines here. As it's explained in other places, there's a light, there are two lights that are brought down. One is called Chayzer, a reflecting light, and one is called Yashar, a direct light. It could mean physically, it could also mean, of course, spiritually and figuratively. That Chayzer, which means a reflecting light, maybe Mehelam al Agilui, that brings out the hidden Keiches and Elamim. That's the term of Chassidus, the hidden Keiches. The Yis and Harbe much more than Keich Yasha, than the direct light. Which means that light that bounces off something, and I think we spoke about this once, that one of the ways of creating a fire, all kids know this trick, is you take a magnifying glass and you, for example, will focus on a leaf or a piece of paper when the sun is shining and it starts burning. And that's because the sun is reflected off the glass, so it has more heat to it than when it's shining directly. And it's brought down in Chassidus that naturally the sun, I just saw this, someone sent this to me yesterday. It's as if it's a news report, but this person is saying that there's a difference of opinion between the scientists in the United States and the scientists in this other country. The scientists in the other country said they create a missile that can go to the sun. Not a missile, a spaceship that can go to the sun. Up until now, we're going to the moon. This one can go to the sun. The scientists in the United States say that it's impossible because if it gets near the sun, it'll just melt. But the scientists in the other countries said, but you don't understand, we'll only have the missile going at night, not by day. So the atmosphere near the sun is boiling hot, naturally, and it's impossible to be there. Even if you go at night, you'll melt. And naturally, the further the light goes, the weaker it becomes. So I would expect that the coolest, so to speak, is down here. It says in Chassidus, up there near the sun, it's very hot. And the atmosphere in the middle is cooler than the atmosphere here that bounces off the earth. Because the heat, when it hits the earth and bounces back, has more intensity to it than what's in the middle in the atmosphere. So basically, that's what Chayzer means, and that's the same principle with everything. I think the answer to your question, at least when we speak about this in Chassidus, and then we have to see how we could apply this to everything else, is that why is it that after when something challenging happens, it's going to bring out the depth of it? Because things that are so deep, they're deep, they can only come out when there's something that's, what's a challenge? Challenge means something which is blocking me, something which is hiding, something which is concealing. These are things that are so deep, they can only come out in that format. They can't come out in a revealed way. It's like saying that the essence of Hashem is, it manifests dafka in this physical world because here everything is hidden, but not in the spiritual worlds where everything is revealed and transparent, because the essence of Hashem can be transparent. So it's the same principle that anything which is concealing, challenging, hiding, going against me, that's where the deepest depth of things can come out under those circumstances. I mean, you're right. There is much more to learn about it and how, but at least we know this is the principle, and that's why envy could be used in a positive way. So I guess we can test ourselves. If I see that I'm observing someone who's davening better than me, learning better than me, reached higher heights than me, and I become depressed from it, I know that it's jealousy and run as far as you can. If I see that it motivates me to do more and gives me more chayas and more energy, then I know that it's a positive kind of envy. Page 119. So the same applies to envy when it comes to holy matters, that it's something that could spark and it could trigger much more intensity than without. This is all applicable when a person's real desire is not my yeshus. It's not that I want to attain a certain image, I want to attain a certain prominence, I want to have a certain title, but I want the good because it's good. I want the truth because it's truth. It's not about me. But if that's not his real objective, it's not that he really wants to be on a level of kedusha and purity and all the things that go along with it. It's about the other person. Why is he standing in a level that's higher than my level? It's about the level, it's about the image, it's about the name. He has 3 titles to his name and I only have 2. He has something which is so much greater than me. People respect him more than they respect me. They look up at him more than they look up at me. His position is so much more of a bigger position than my position. This is very severe and very difficult because this comes from Yeshus, like I said before. Page 120. It looks like the Rebbe Rashav just can't say it enough. And because it's Yeshus, here we go again. And therefore, he hates more those who actually serve Hashem. And they are, like I said before, at a certain level of prominence and a certain level of spirituality. And it's interesting, this person, he's going to actually relate to simple people, and he loves simple people, and he always hangs around simple people. A person could delude himself and think, and he can actually fool himself and think, look at himself and see, I'm really a humble person. And that's why I don't have any issues with hanging around simple people. That's what it looks like. But it's very possible that actually it's because of Yeshus. Why? Because he is one that serves Hashem and he has a certain level of spirituality. Therefore, is kol sinasa, who does he hate? Who's threatening? Someone who has a maila, has a madrega, a certain level, that's threatening to me. That's something which threatens my yeshus. But simple people, these are people that they don't have any special prominence and there's no special substance to them. They don't threaten me, so I love to be by them. And these are the people that I love and I want to help and I want to work with. Then I say, I do this because of Ahavas Yisrael. In other words, of course it's a good thing. He's not saying don't help simple people, chas v'sholem. He's just saying that a person who only involves himself with simple people could interpret that in his own mind that this is bittul, but in reality, it could be actually a result of yeshus. Mishu gas v'yesh yoser. There could even be another thing. Someone is even more coarse and has even more yeshus. It's possible that the reason why he loves them and why he's so close to them is such a sham mispashat yeshusay. That's a place where his yeshus could expand itself and his yeshus could really grow because these simple people like him. They give him a lot of honor. And they accept what he says And when he says something, they really trust what he says. The other people, he says something, they say, yeah, it could be, but I think there might be a different opinion. And that's a blow to his yeshus. He's expecting that when he says something, everybody should say, yay, you said the right thing. Oh, that's very smart. So the people that are simple, they go by that, and therefore it feels good for his yeshus. And that's why we said before that when you're searching for chametz, you got to search with a candle and a flame and look into the cracks, because it could be. So I guess how would I know myself if my involvement in helping simple people is not because I'm being more sensitive and more caring and I have extraordinary Aris Yisrael, but it's Yeshus. How can I know if it's Yeshus? Or maybe it's a positive thing that shows that I'm very caring.
Well,
What would be the test?
One of those simple people said they became greater and he wouldn't like them.
Either that, or if I only involve myself with simple people, then it's a sign that that's the motivation. But if I'm a person that I'm involved with scholars and with good people and people that are a higher class, and I'm involved with simple people, then I know that my Ahavas Yisrael is unconditional. Let's do the key to the summary. Mailas Akira de Gedusha. The Maila, this chapter discusses the Maila of jealousy when it comes from Kedusha. Yeshus Gorem is sinner the bar Maila. Yeshus causes a person to hate dafka someone who has achieved a certain level. Yachali is ba'aval anoshim pshuta, but it's possible that this person loves simple people and loves to associate with simple people. And that is for a different reason than what he thinks. It could be that it's attributed to Yeshus, not to his humility. So it's interesting that something which actually outwardly looks like the height of bittul could be coming from Yeshus. So I said yesterday I wanted to add something when we spoke about the fact that what deceives us more than anything else is the seichel. In other words, the logic comes along and rationalizes that I should hate this person because he did this wrong or he did that wrong, all the things that he mentioned before. And how much we can trust Seichel. Seichel is very tricky and Seichel is very deceptive because Seichel is motivated by personal interests and you don't know where it's going to take me, and it's also camouflage, you don't see it. So I raised the question, but isn't Chassidus, Chabad, all about Seichel? Like our banner is Chochma Bina Das. And we're not like the other Chassidim that have high, mainly emotion. We're Seichel. So, and here we're sort of putting down Seichel. So what I mentioned yesterday briefly was that it's not true. Chassidus is not Seichel. Chassidus really is getting to understand how Hashem is infinite. And Hashem is beyond Seichel. And Seichel is absolutely insignificant in the presence of Hashem. And we have to have Kabbalah Soil, all those things. That's really what the essence of Chassidus is all about. But Chassidus Chabad is to take these ideas, which in their own merit, in their own right, are beyond, and it penetrates my being in an internalized way. That's the mind. But not only cold seichel. That's not what Chassidus is. So what I wanted to mention is a story. For a long time, the story was not understood until one time it just hit me. It's a long story, and I'll make it very brief. How the Rebbe Rashab and the Rebbe Marash, we find stories of them traveling. Our Rebbe never traveled anywhere. He traveled a few times to Camp Gan Yisrael, but never. Other Rebbe used to travel to Hasidic communities outside of Lubavitch and visit and say a mimer there. All the Rebbeim. Our Rebbe did not travel. That's another discussion in itself. And the Rebbe Marash would travel, but in those days, nobody knew who was who. There were no pictures like today. So no one knew that this was the Rebbe Marash. And he came to a Hasidic place, and he sees old men with long white beards. It was a summer day. They were just without their shirts in their tzitzis, and they're scrubbing the floors and scrubbing the walls. and other old men are carrying buckets of water from a well down the hill. And what's going on? Why is everybody washing the floors and the walls, and what's happening? So they said that our Rebbe is coming to visit, and we want to prepare the place to look appropriate for the Rebbe. Okay. Then he asked another question: why are you taking water from the well down the hill? There's a well right over here. So they said there's a very wealthy man that he said he wants to have the schus that we use the water from his well. And he said if we use the water from his well, he'll pay for all the expenses of this big meal that we're going to have. Okay? And he asked another question. Why do the old men do this? Why don't you get the younger Hasidim to do this and train them how precious a tzaddik is supposed to be to you and all that? And the Rebbe Rash said they gave me the answer to one question and the other question, but this question they never answered. Why were the older Hasidim doing it? It's a big schus, but they should really be training in the younger Hasidim, telling them to do it. So the Rebbe Rash said, because this is only in Chabad, such Mesiras Nefesh, because we know how precious it is for a Chassid to do something for his Rebbe, to give that up and give it over to the younger Chassid and give it up, and you don't have that schus yourself, that's Chabad. Now think to myself, why is that Chabad? Just the opposite. These are Hasidim that are not so much in the intellectual, they're just pure emotion. Pure emotion, there's room to do things that are not intellectual. But Chabad is intellectual. When you're intellectual, that we always say that interferes with Mesiras Nefesh. Let's think for a second in Russia. Who were the ones that had underground yeshivas, put their life on the line, got arrested by the communists, and Rahman al-Islam executed so many Chassidim? Who had that Mesiras Nefesh? Only Chabad. Where were the other Chassidim? Those who didn't study Chassidus, to begin with, they don't have that kind of passion. But Chassidim have passion for Yiddishkeit. And they had Mesiras Nefesh for Shabbos, for Kashrus, for their beard. Why didn't they have the Mesiras Nefesh to go and establish a cheder for children and save other people's lives and see that everybody could keep Yiddishkeit? Only Chabad was Mesiras Nefesh. And the same thing now. The Rebbe took all this Chassidim, sent them out to go to places where there's no Yiddishkeit, spread Yiddishkeit there. What's the rest of the world doing? The rest of the world, generally speaking, especially the Hasidic world, they're occupied with teaching their own children, learning themselves day and night, Gemara and Halacha, and even Hasidus, and growing. But this idea of putting everything aside, my own personal growth, and go out and try to bring Yiddishkeit to someone else, that's not their thing. So again, Mesiras Nefesh. This is a greater Mesiras Nefesh, giving up my ruchnias. Why is Chabad identified with Mesiras Nefesh? Chabad is Seichel. Seichel is always a thing that blocks and weakens Mesiras Nefesh. So this is the answer, because Chabad is not Seichel. That is a mistake. The premise is a mistake. Chabad is recognizing Ein Sof, the infinity. And not only that, Seichel is Ayim Timatze. Seichel comes from nothing. Seichel is a creation of Hashem, just like a banana peel. I don't know if you know this, but Chochmah Batzilus and a banana peel are both equal and compared to Ein Sof. And a grapefruit peel, okay. I don't want the grapefruit to be jealous.
That should be the provocative title of the book you write.
Of what?
Of the book you write. It would sell really well.
I can see that. That's the kind of title that'll sell. So this is the answer. Of course, other Chassidim they had Mesiras Nefesh. You read heroic stories that people gave up their lives for Shabbos, for Kashrus, even to let their beard grow. They had Mesiras Nefesh. Had Mesiras Nefesh for Tefillin. So many stories in the Holocaust. When you hear these stories, hair-raising stories. But this kind of Mesiras Nefesh, to give up your ruchnias and give up your gashmis and give up your family and go out and bring Yiddishkeit to others, even according to halacha, it's not required. But this is the Mesiras Nefesh beyond the normal Mesiras Nefesh. And that we're going to find in Chabad, because Chabad is not Seichel. So when people say Chabad is intellect, that is not true. Now, if I have that devotion and dedication to something which is higher than Seichel, that'll protect me, that my Seichel will go in the right direction. Yes, if it's only Seichel, then I'll be in trouble. Thank you. Okay, hope Seichel will forgive me, but we're also saying that Seichel is really special, and Seichel is nice, and with Seichel we can understand Hashem, Chabad. Don't worry, come after me. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.